All right, well, I want to welcome everybody to Utility Bill Optimization and LEED Advanced Tracking. This course is approved for GBCI, AIBD, BPI, non-whole house, as well as AIA, Health, Welfare, and Safety, which may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. My name is Brett Little, and I am the program manager here at the nonprofit, the Green Home Institute. Our mission is to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. We're going to be talking a lot about, how do we utilize our utility bills, especially in the multifamily and commercial sector, and how that will tie into many of the green building programs and can be used to help reduce cost is the ultimate goal. And I'm super thankful for this session sponsor, Build Equinox, with the Serve 2 smart ventilation system. Unlike traditional ERVs or HRVs, these have many qualities of a smarter balanced ventilation feedback monitoring. With a standard ERV or HRV, you get a constant low airflow rate with no relation to the actual indoor air quality or occupancy. For the first 3 days when the home is occupied in this description, the air quality is poor. The ERV just can't keep up. When the occupants leave on vacation, the ERV keeps ventilating and wasting energy. Since the Serve actually monitors the air quality, it ventilates only when it's needed. Compared to an ERV, the Serve can ventilate up to 300 CFM, quickly purging pollutants from the home. When no ventilation is needed, the Serve can recirculate and unify the home, providing some additional heating, cooling, or dehumidification in an energy efficient manner. The Serve does this by monitoring CO2 and volatile organic compound levels. And so when these are detected, they're preset by your clients to whatever level they want to be, or the levels recommended by some of the air quality agencies, and then ventilates to reduce the CO2s and VOCs as needed. Instead of an ERV exchange core, the Serve has a high efficiency heat pump to exchange energy between incoming supply and outgoing air. And it has advanced easy filter access, which can get all the way up to MERV 13 or MERV 16, which of course can help stop viral transmission. One cool thing about these folks is that they manufacture right in Urbana, Illinois, in a facility that's 100% powered by solar. And they team up with many of our other friends. They work great with a heat pump water heater such as the Rheem Proterra to boost capacity, or work with Radiant. They can work to help distribute Mitsubishi's mini split system air around homes, which we've seen in some of our projects. They can also work with our friends over at GeoComfort geothermal or water furnace to boost geo. Check them out at buildequinox.com today. And then I also want to thank our second sponsor, Niagara Conservation. They've got some of the lowest flowing toilets on the planet, all the way down to 0.5 gallons per flush. I've got one, it works just great. And we see many of our multifamily affordable housing renovators swapping this out to help reduce water bills, and they're just as durable as traditional toilets. And they've got 1.5 gallon per minute aerators, 1.25 shower heads, super low flow to help save water. All right, so again, utility bill optimization and LEED advanced tracking. When it comes to LEED certification, there are some additional bonus points if you follow some of the recommendations that we're going to be talking about throughout this session. There are a couple different strategies here. So if you go into the advanced utility tracking credit, it's not a requirement, but credit on their website, at least for LEED for homes, and I believe commercial, you can do whole building master metering, which is pathway 1. And so step 1 is share data through utility reporting. So you confirm the building has a single master electrical meter for all units, select a utility tracking provider, such as the one we're going to be talking about, and that can share data with USGBC. Very, very simple. And then document that. Or pathway 2, if there's individual unit meters, share data through utility reporting, common space of the energy use, and then I believe they're going to be looking for at least 50% of the occupants to get access to their data through some sort of disclosure and be able to share that. And then the other important thing is that you're educating the occupants on, what their utility usage is. Maybe you're doing some sort of incentive if they enroll into the program and review their utility usage and reduce it. Or maybe you're doing something like a battle of the buildings like we do here in Michigan every year, where there's a big competition and people can win money or pizza or whatever to reduce their energy. So there's all sorts of fun ideas you can use for that. But as long as you're finding a way to track it through a third-party application and USGBC can access it, that's a great way to get those points. And so we're going to talk about a strategy to do that here today. For those of you who are using the Enterprise Green Communities program, this is not extra points anymore. This is mandatory. So you do have to track this. You have to track utility usage, gas, electric, and water, both for a significant amount of the tenants as well as the common spaces in your Green Communities certification projects. So we help with that, with our teams that are doing that, but that is something that is required. And again, we're going to talk about throughout the strategies today that we're going to hear about. This is going to be available to you to easily document and meet the requirement for Enterprise Green Communities and sharing it with them. So with that, I will hand it off to Brian Haverding. Brian is the Managing Director at Foresight Management. He has 4+ years of experience leading commercial and industrial facility operators to greater understanding of their energy usage and costs and developing strategies for management and improvement. So with that, Brian, I'm going to hand it to you, and please do take it away.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks a lot, Brett. I appreciate it. Give me just a second here to make sure I figure out the share screen properly. Monitor 2. We'll do that. That looking good, Brett?
It is, yep.
All right, wonderful. Cool. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us today, and special thanks to Brett for inviting myself to present on utility bill optimization and some of the work that myself and my team have been up to over the last handful of years in the energy management space. We have been living and breathing energy management in commercial and industrial and many times residential buildings over the last several years. And so it's exciting to get to know other folks in this space and understand what you guys are attempting to do as it relates to tracking and optimization and ultimately lowering both the usage and cost of your energy bills. It's something that we nerd out on quite a bit, and we're looking forward to nerding out with you guys a little bit more. So thanks for being here, and once again, yeah, thanks to Brett. I'm going to go through a brief presentation here. In addition to the presentation, there's going to be a little bit of a technology demonstration that we'll do about midway through, but just as a little bit of a pathway to where we're going, we'll start with a brief introduction. We'll talk at a high level about utility bill collection and some best practices as it relates to collecting utility bills on a regular basis. I mentioned we'll go through a little demonstration of a technology platform that can assist in doing that collection. And then we'll get into some items around utility optimization. So how can we leverage this data collection and these best practices around seeing this data on a regular basis, leverage that information into cost savings and better transparency across the board. And then we'll have some time for open discussion and questions. Along the way, though, I'm happy to answer questions along the way. Brett and I talked about 45 minutes ago that we'd love for this to be a conversation as much as possible. So if there are questions that you want to submit, Brett has been given permission by me to interrupt me along the way. So he'll definitely do that, and we can have this be a dynamic discussion along the way. With that, though, just a quick introduction. So Brett alluded to it a second ago. My name is Brian Haberdink. I'm from Foresight Management. Foresight is a energy and sustainability consulting firm and engineering firm based here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We were founded in 2007. Our focuses are on energy and sustainability management, partnering as an outsourced sort of energy or sustainability manager for our clients. And we do that by leveraging software, consulting expertise, as well as a robust engineering team here as well. Before we get too far into utility bill collection and some of the nitty-gritty details that go along with that, I want to kind of zoom out and start with why. If you were in the conference room that I'm sitting in right now, you would see behind me a nice color-coordinated bookshelf. It's our new Dewey Decimal System, I joke. But on that bookshelf, you would see about 6 copies of a book by a guy named Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And Simon in the book describes this golden circle of leadership and organizational motivation that at the most outer ring is answering the question, what do we do? And then as you move forward, how do we do it? And then at the center, the golden circle, why are we doing it? What is kind of the bigger picture reason behind this project or this initiative? And we start every conversation as it relates to new initiatives here at Foresight with this question of why. And it's really instrumental in how we developed our own systems around energy management. The why at the core of it was we needed to have greater understanding and have the ability to make data-based decisions for everything that we do. And so when we talk to clients and when we talk to potential partners, we always try to circle back and start with why as much as possible. As we kind of drill down into that question a little bit deeper though around utility bill collection, at the foundation of energy management, we believe is a process and system that starts with supply side management. So supply side management is collecting data from our electricity, gas, water, all of the vendors that are producing and serving a building with energy assets. We want to create good, robust systems around supply side management because, as the famed Austrian consultant Peter Drucker said, you cannot manage what you don't measure. So we need to start with a really robust system around how we're measuring the supply side of the energy that's flowing into our building. Some of the reasons why this is of high importance for an organization is it establishes a common language. So as you go from coast to coast and really around the globe, the language of energy changes, just like the language that we speak changes. There's, as many of you know, there's different units of measure. There's different types of charges that exist on a utility bill. There's different ways to measure the consumption for a particular building. And so developing a supply side strategy that has a common language is first and foremost very important and helps us make good decisions. The second piece is a singular location. So this gets at the technology demo that we'll go through in a little bit. But being able to house all of our utility data for the number of different facilities or different types of units within a campus that we're tracking, having that all live and breathe in one location that we can then share to our constituents or stakeholders is very important and helps us make quick and efficient decisions. The third piece is the cultural impact, transparency, and savings. So these are all kind of 3 different things, but the cultural impact and transparency piece is really lifting up the fact that, hey, if we're going to commit ourselves to measuring our energy data, this is more than just one person, their role at the organization. This is something that we want to sort of permeate the entire team, permeate the entire company. So that everybody has some buy-in and sees a direct tie between their activities and how it's impacting the overall goals and measurement strategies of the organization. And by way of doing that, by way of measuring, we oftentimes find savings. The Association of Energy Engineers released a study not long ago that said simply by putting building management systems and utility management systems in place, simply by just doing that, not necessarily embarking on any other strategy, facilities see a 3 to 10% reduction in overall energy usage and cost. It's that old adage of just paying attention makes more successful results. And then the final thing is data-grounded decision making. So as facility operators are considering things like LED upgrades or toilet upgrades or HVAC upgrades or roof replacements, it's good to have data-based decision making at our fingertips. And what better way to make those decisions than grabbing the actual utility data from the actual facility to make those best decisions. So those are kind of the why reasons, why we're doing this, why it matters, right? Data-based decision making and best practices that all stakeholders can kind of jump on board with. The how we do it, though, kind of moving back on that golden circle, the how we do that can be done in a lot of different ways, right? Microsoft Excel is a great tool that we can utilize to track data and share files. But another way that we can track a lot of this data is by leveraging technology. And I'm going to go through a demonstration of a software platform that our team has built at Foresight that does exactly this. It's an energy management dashboard that collects utility data on a regular basis and then pushes it out to our clients. There's a number of these kinds of softwares in the marketplace today, but I'm going to take you through a demonstration of ours so you guys can see some of the some of the features that exist in these types of platforms. So bear with me here a second. I'm going to pause and jump into here. And then we will start again. Okay. Brett, are we still good on the share screen? Are you guys seeing the dashboard?
Sorry, Brett, I've got mute on here. Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, good. For a second there, I thought I was lost in the sea of technology. Okay, cool. All right, great. So now we're into the energy management dashboard, and what we have in front of us here is just a sample client of ours. But I want to show you guys sort of the way that this works and some of the features that it has, and then how it could potentially apply to some of the projects you guys are working on. So we're on the home page here of the dashboard, which has a number of different sort of modules within it. I'm going to start here by just focusing on what's on the top left-hand side of the screen. So what we have here is the ability to filter out our data. So maybe zooming back just a little bit, when we onboard a new facility or a new organization, we map out that facility in a hierarchy of sites, buildings, and then meters. Brett mentioned earlier that for a lot of these projects and for the requirements for credits, there needs to be certain percentage thresholds met of how much utility data is collected and for what types of properties. That's where this sort of hierarchy and framework comes in. We can organize by an overall site, which we sort of describe as a campus. And on that campus can be multiple buildings. There could be an office building, a maintenance building, in a lot of the cases of our clients, a manufacturing building, but names of different buildings on that campus. And then each of those buildings is fed by individual utility meters, water, electricity, gas, et cetera. And so we start by building out that framework so that we can filter our data down, or we can zoom all the way back up and see the organization as a whole. So what we're looking at here is the last 12 months of data, February 2020 to February of 2021, and we're filtering right now to just the meter of electricity. Beneath here, you can see the different tables that I described as sites, buildings, and meters. And as we filter these out, what gets produced at the bottom here are dynamic graphs of consumption and cost. Simple bar graphs that when hovering over them, we can see the actual consumption of electricity as well as the actual cost on a month-to-month basis over the last 12 months. The other thing that we can do, well, let me back up a second. So if we click on just an individual site, we'll see in Birmingham, Alabama, on that site, there are 4 different buildings, building 1, building 1A, the office, and the warehouse. Clicking through and selecting these automatically updates our graphs down here below so that we can see trends from month to month and from year to year as we filter out. So somewhat predictably, we have in Birmingham, Alabama, an office building that we would anticipate to have higher electricity bills in the summertime rather than the winter because of the increased load of electricity. And we can clearly see that here in our trends for both consumption and cost. If we wanted to get more granular though, if we wanted to go beyond just the bar graph and see, hey, what are the actual utility bills saying for this particular building, we can toggle from graph to the table view. And what the table view shows us is all of the information from a utility bill that our team is grabbing or that the software is grabbing on the back end. So as you guys can relate, perhaps there's a lot of complexity in an electricity or water or gas bill. There's a lot of different things being measured and numbers and words flying around. What we're doing and what software can do on the back end is grab the most pertinent data, the consumption, the cost, the start date and end date, the name of the account and meter so that it maps in properly to the right building and an individual location, and then push that into the software. And so that's what we're doing here. We see we've got a utility provider of Alabama Power, account and meter number clearly listed, what the metric is, start date and end date of that particular utility bill service period, and then the consumption and overall cost. In addition to grabbing all of that information, software can also be a housing place for the actual utility bill, which in many cases is very important because this is the source data. This is how we're getting the information. And in the world of auditing and greenhouse gas emission reporting and making sure that our data is as accurate as possible, we want to make sure that we have the correct source data housed directly here. So clicking on this attachment pulls up the actual copy of the invoice that we can see all of the other information on. Filter back out. The other way that we can organize data in software is by tagging individual buildings. So if there's multiple facilities across the country that an operator is responsible for, and he or she wants to look at them by a different type of category than just geographic, they can tag the buildings with certain names. So just listing a few tags here, for example, we have manufacturing buildings, quality control, office buildings, regional branches, warehouses. All of these things are at the discretion of the facility operator to name and to map in and can work within the software to sort of reorganize it to best meet their organization's sort of structure. A couple other pages that I just want to show real quick. There's a trends page here. So this very similar page to that home page, but just gets a little bit more, I guess, right up in front of us. We can see consumption and cost trends by select, and then we can select, different data sets going back to however far we want, back to March of 2019, for example. We can see the trends of the entire organization. And then we can also drill down here into individual sites, buildings, accounts, and meters as well, and graphs automatically update. The raw data page is another page that we can view all of that information that we're grabbing from an individual bill. Again, we can continue to filter down. And then the last piece that I wanted to show is the idea of data completeness is a big deal in the world of utility tracking. Hey, am I grabbing all of the information or just a percentage of it? And so there's in many of these softwares, including ours, there's a gap analysis feature, which shows for each of the sites and buildings and meters how well the software is doing, and the provider, in our case, how well we're doing on collecting utility data from each individual facility on each given month, and what our sort of percent completion is here across the top. I'm going to stop sharing. There's a couple other things that I just want to go through, but they're not necessarily related to the dashboard. So I'm going to pause here a second.
Would this be a good time for any questions, or are you going to still stick to some more dash? I don't want to ask something you're going to get to, so.
No, go ahead, Brett. Have at it. I'm done with the demo of the dashboard, but I can easily bring it back up if there's a question pertaining to it.
Well, yeah, there's a great question here. You know, more and more utilities are moving towards time of use, or I guess even away from that now into smart energy management, I guess I want to call it, and based on hourly ratings, and, you know, trying to shift usage to certain times of the day and reward you financially for that. So, I mean, is this something you all are able to address, or you're planning to address, and help provide people information on not just the month, but or the day, but, you know, the actual hour of usage?
Yeah. So that's a great question, and something that we've been working on over the last few years, because more and more utilities, to your point, are implementing these types of rates and then making this data available to their customers. How our platform, the Foresight platform, how it currently is structured is not to show interval data necessarily, but just to show the monthly data, the monthly overall consumption and cost. However, what we'll get into this in a little bit around the optimization piece, what our team does, and not to make this too much of a Foresight thing, but what can be done is we can grab that data from the utility provider, that interval data with every 15 minutes laid out of exactly how much is being consumed. And then we can lay that against calculators that we've built on the back end that show exactly what the charges are at the different times of day. Typically in a time of use rate, you're going to have on-peak and off-peak hours, on-peak hours being typically between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., and off-peak hours being on the nights and in the weekends, or in the nights and in the weekends. Consumers' energy here in the great state of Michigan has gotten more granular than that, as has SoCal Edison and several other utilities across the country, where they have different rates in like 2 or 3 hour chunks at different times of the year, different seasons of the year. And so when we talk about utility optimization in a minute, what our team really emphasizes is let's grab that interval data whenever we can. If consumers or Southern California Edison or ComEd is going to make that available, let's get that information and let's run through some calculators to make sure that the facility is on the best rate. That is something from a software perspective that's on the long-term roadmap for us, but we're currently just providing the monthly data and the monthly collection of that data.
Yeah, and you kind of started answering my next question, and just to confirm, I mean, you're not expecting folks to be, you know, sending in all this data all the time. You can work out agreements with the utility companies to collect it all, correct?
That's a great question, Brett, and the answer is yes. There's not a great way of showing that, but the way that we onboard a facility or a group of facilities is first by obtaining all of the facility data, addresses, number of electricity and gas accounts, account numbers, account meters. We grab a utility copy, a bill copy from the client. And then we go to work on getting the rest of that data, the historical data and the data moving forward from the utility provider themselves. So the way that the software works in the background is by way of a utility login, so a username and a password, we can go out and grab data on a daily basis. So as soon as a new bill is made available by the utility, our software is grabbing that data and pulling it into our software. So there's no manual process of somebody needing to submit a bill and then fat fingering that bill into some dashboard or into some Excel file. The software is continually going out and looking for new data from that account for that building and pulling it into the dashboard on a regular basis.
Great. And then, lastly, like when it comes to the LEED certification program or enterprise, there is a requirement that, one of the folks at this entity could be able to access your data just to make sure that you're performing well. So are there opportunities, within these tools to give other entities, a way to review a limited amount of information? I'm sure there's privacy issues in place, but is that something you can do?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And in fact, I'm going to share my screen again. There's within the software, there's a few different functions that exist for sharing data. When a building or a facility or a group of facilities or organization is set up, like 123 Corp is here, we can set up parameters that say share only consumption data with this particular person or this group of people at this outside organization. We'll give them their email address and they'll receive an invitation to our dashboard to view whatever the entity is that wants to share the data with them. They can log in and view all that information, and we do that just by going up here to settings, and we do this through this members and invitations page, and we can set up some criteria on what they're able to see and what they're not able to see.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, great questions. Yep. Are there any other questions as it relates to the software?
Well, I was looking at the kilowatt hour report, and I'm wondering, obviously, you need to get granular on your consumption on gas and electric, if you're trying to make informed decisions, and you're going to talk a little bit about this now, so I'm not going to get too far ahead, but if you're trying to, from a sustainability standpoint, get a sort of high level, like, whatever it might be, and then like my facility uses this much energy per year, however you want to make the conversion, MMBTU or therms or kilowatts, do you have the ability to merge gas and electric together? Do you provide, carbon use data, so people might be able to say, oh, I could buy this many carbon offsets? Or do you have anything in place where people can get carbon offsets working with you through your program, or if you're looking into that? Just some thoughts if people are trying to tell this narrative of like, yeah, we're offsetting, here's our total usage, and here's how we're trying to offset it.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, Brett, great questions. And all things that are on our roadmap from a development perspective. We sort of our position in this world is we want to be the go-to for data completeness and data integrity. We want our clients and users to know that we've created processes and systems that lift up data completeness and data integrity above all else. And then all the fun things that people do with energy data, we want to hear about them and we want to build them into the dashboard when appropriate. But there's a ton of different use cases. The ones that you mentioned, though, those are definitely things that are on our roadmap for automatically converting into carbon or into greenhouse gas emissions for a particular set of data. That's on the roadmap for something we're working on developing right now. The other thing that you mentioned is collecting data and converting it into MMBTUs. That's another functionality that exists as well. But the thing that I think most of our users are leveraging this system for is the data completion. And so they come down here to this raw data page. They see all of the individual items that exist from the utility bills, and then they just download it into Excel, and they do the fun things that they need to do for their stakeholders and their own business needs by just working it out in Excel. That being said, the greenhouse gas emissions and carbon management stuff, those are both on our development roadmaps.
Great, thanks, Brian.
Yeah, you bet. All right, I'm going to pause again and get back to the presentation. And there we go. Okay. Okay, so we've actually been hinting at this a little bit, but just wanted to go through briefly some trends in the overall electricity and natural gas industry that are impacting the way that facility operators and building owners are being charged for energy. Many of these things will probably be obvious, but they have implications on literally the rates that we kind of talked about a second ago, and some of the procurement opportunities that exist within utilities. So the first thing is the evolution of the electricity grid here in the United States. So what you can see from this graph, which I pulled this morning from the EIA, is the generation assets that exist here in the US are consistently moving away from solar toward natural gas, and the share of renewables like wind and solar here on the bottom are continuing to grow. Because of this, utilities are changing out their generation assets all the time, and are faced with assets that they need to maintain on their balance sheet, like big coal power plants that are consistently being disrupted by things like distributed generation, people putting solar panels on their own house, organizations developing other generation assets within their own building. So there's a lot of disruption in the whole generation mix that's impacting how utilities are then passing on charges to their customers. That evolution can be seen here in this bar graph as well. Over the last couple of years, this is year-to-year data from 2019, we've seen a 24% increase in solar and a 12% increase in wind assets on the energy consumption or energy generation grid, and coal is continually kind of falling behind. In addition to that evolution, there's just this overall increased demand for electricity globally. There's the electrification of more and more developing societies, as well as societies like the US with EVs, with building automation continuing to improve, as well as growing populations and higher standards of living. So there's been a strain and a higher degree of demand for electricity in our residential and commercial spaces primarily. With all these sort of shifts in the grid and in the demand, in the supply and demand for electricity, utilities have been responding, and the question earlier is one that resonates with one way they're responding, and that's through time of use rates. So in response to this evolving electricity grid and the smarter grid, utilities are basically partnering with their clients, saying, hey, here's how we're getting charged for electricity. Here's our business model. Help us improve. Help us avoid demand charges, avoid these rolling brownouts by understanding better how you're being charged for electricity and when the grid is most strained. So time of use rates are becoming a norm for utilities across the country. Demand response programs are also becoming much more normal. So this is the idea of shifting load to off-peak hours as much as possible, and is really being seen in the manufacturing and industrial space, but more and more in commercial spaces as well. So I want to get into rates and tariffs a little bit. So talking about the utility industry, talking about how electric utilities specifically are charging their customers for their monthly bills. The idea of rates and tariffs is something that kind of goes back though to this whole idea of supply side management and consistently monitoring our facilities' energy usage, as well as monitoring the utility landscape of how they're charging customers for these fuels. Comes into this idea of consistently looking at rates and tariffs. So just go through a few bullet points here as an overview. New construction projects, green builds, are oftentimes placed on electricity and gas rates at the time of construction, and then are shifted into the appropriate rate that they should be on at the time that the building is completed and it's turnkeyed. Market shifts and grid evolution, as we discussed a little bit earlier, are inspiring these utilities to come out with new rates on a very consistent basis, as often as once per year. These utility providers, however, even though they come out with new rates, they're rarely proactive about setting their customers up on the best rate possible. So they don't look at how each of the buildings and each of the facilities within their territory are using energy on a year-to-year basis and then putting them in the best rate. Oftentimes, most oftentimes, they leave that to the customer to understand and make those changes on their own. And in addition to the utilities changing, facilities are ever changing, right? We're implementing energy efficiency projects, we're upgrading to LEDs, we're changing out air conditioning units, we're doing complete building remodels. Because of all of those things that happen in our facilities, the facilities profile of how it's using energy is also evolving. So you have these kind of two dynamic things at play. The utilities are changing, and then the very specific facility that we're operating is also changing, and the rates need to sort of line up and need to be continually reviewed in order to make sure that we're doing the best we can. So some recommendations as it relates to rates and tariffs. First, if you have a utility representative that you have the contact information for, reach out to them and say, hey, I'm working on this facility, I'm working with this building, or I'm working on this project. I want to make sure that we're actually on the best rate. Can you do a review of this account and this meter, ensure that our electricity and gas rates are where they should be based on the historical usage that we've had. The other thing is just a quick example on this. So asking the utility representative, last year we were working with one of our clients who was building a large retail store down in Indiana, and that store was built actually in 2017, and at the time it was placed on just a very small general service rate with the local utility. It was placed on that rate when the building was being constructed. So during construction, it wasn't drawing a ton of electricity. And then at the time that the store opened, it stayed on that general service rate. It didn't get moved to the appropriate large primary rate that it should be on. So for about a year and a half, prior to our engagement with the client, about a year and a half went by and they were on this general small rate. And when we came in and started doing utility bill collection for them and reviewing rates and understanding their usage profile, it stood out like a sore thumb, because it was such a small rate relative to the type of building with refrigeration and heating and cooling and lighting, and it resulted in a rate change that is going to save or help them avoid about $200,000 per year in electricity costs. And this isn't to say that happens all the time, but it is to sort of lift up this idea of continuous monitoring of both utility bills and of the utility industry to make sure that the rates are the most appropriate ones. I mentioned this before, so demand response, look out for increasing demand charges over the next several months and years within the utility space. There's more and more with smart meters and the grid being stressed at individual times. Those charges are being passed on to the customers more and more. Consider items on utility bills that could be avoided is another thing to look out for. So as you're reviewing utility bills for your buildings, look at items like sales tax, look at items like energy optimization programs, and ask your utility reps, hey, are these things that I need to be paying? Sales tax, do I need to be paying that? Our bill, or we're a nonprofit, or we're doing some manufacturing at this building. What are the rules around sales tax that we can maybe take some exemptions on? And then, just a plug here to run calculations at least on an annual basis to make sure that those rates are in the best place possible, and partner with a trusted advisor to do that if need be. Any questions on, I'm going to pause there on rates and tariffs. We talked about it a little bit with the time of use stuff on the demonstration, but I'll pause there if there's any questions.
Not specific to that, but if something does come up, I'll let you know.
Okay, no problem. All right, we'll keep going here. So that's rates and tariffs. That's your plan with your local utility provider, your consumers, or DTE, or SEMCO, or the local provider that owns and operates the transmission lines that sends the electricity and gas to your building. Those are the rates and tariffs that some best practices around that you can take away. The other piece of the pie is energy procurement, and we differentiate these two things. So as you can see from this map, the markets for electricity and natural gas and the regulation around them differs from state to state. So as you can see from the key here, the states in whites are completely regulated for electricity and natural gas. Light blue are deregulated for gas, dark blue electricity, and then the stripes are deregulated gas and electricity markets. And what this means is that particular state has adopted deregulation. So they've opened up their market for alternative energy suppliers and energy marketers to introduce increased competition within those states. So they're not just handing a monopoly to the incumbent utility provider. They're offering or they're opening that up to greater competition. This has been something that's really been evolving over the last several decades. The passages of things like the Energy Policy Act in 1992. In 2001, Michigan decided to deregulate their entire natural gas market, as well as 10% of their electricity market. And these things are continually on the floor of state legislatures' offices and talked about and are evolving. And what this really means, though, from a customer's perspective, is you have choice. You don't have to buy the commodity of electricity or gas from the utility. You can contract for that commodity with an alternative supplier. From a basic level, the market structure looks like this, right? We've got generation, we've got resellers, which include the utility companies, but also in deregulated spaces include electricity marketers and natural gas marketers, and then we have end users. Alternative suppliers in deregulated markets, the advantage there that they can offer is oftentimes more kind of a broader base of product offerings. They have more renewable assets and can offer unique products as it relates to wind energy or solar, more so than the local utility can. They also can offer long-term contracts for the commodity of gas or electricity. So if you want to lock in for 12 or 24 months to a certain price and a certain volume, you can do that. You can hedge against some market risk. All of this is helping create more competitive markets for these utilities, and is challenging, honestly, the incumbent utilities that have been given monopolies in the space to bring on new products, to add more green generation into their mix, and offer it to their customers. I've just listed a few examples of alternative suppliers that have a prominent kind of position here in Michigan and in the Midwest, but there are certainly others as well.
Brian, is that
Yeah.
is that kind of like when the the guy comes knocking on your door and they're wearing the safety vest and they're like, hey, I can get you a better deal on your gas usage. I mean, is that kind of what you're talking about, but at a grander level?
Spot on, Brett. Yes, and I was going to give that story in the recommendations section next. There's so yes, this is as grand as hedging strategies and buying into the future and having a real like commodity sort of trading strategy and risk management strategy, all the way down to the guy in the safety vest that walks up to your door, knocks, and says, hey, can I see your natural gas bill? I think I can get you a better deal. For the story I'll give is 2.5 years ago now. I was sitting in my living room. We got a knock on the door. My wife went to the door to answer it. And she said, hey, she turned to me and said, hey, there's a guy here that wants to see our natural gas bill. And so I walked outside with him, and he was running me through his spiel on, hey, like, let me see one of your DTE bills. I think I can get you a better rate. I asked him politely to see the clipboard that he had in his hand, and the contract that he was going to sign me up for. And I saw, yep, in fact, it was true. The first month or first 2 months, the rate, the per unit rate of natural gas would have been lower than what I was paying with DTE. But the fine print of the contract in pages 2 and 3 explained that as soon as the first 3 months are up, then I'm going to be transitioned into this variable market rate that's going to have these different adders associated with it. That's going to be, basically an unknown price, and I'm locking into that strategy for 36 months if I signed on the dotted line. And so, needless to say, I sent the man in the vest on his way. But it's not something that's atypical, especially with organizations that we work with, right? There's a lot of facilities out there in the world who have people, focused on other things, not just their gas or electricity bills. So when they hear that they can get a better deal from a marketer or from somebody that comes up and shows them a contract, oftentimes they sign up, and oftentimes those are very bad deals. And because of that, there's sort of a black eye on the energy marketing industry, because there's been a lot of poor performers and not so above the table activities going on in the space. And so that's where we recommend taking a close look at what you're buying, taking a close look at any contracts that you might be in or unknowingly might be in on your utility bills. Oftentimes, right on the bill, it will say who the marketer is if you're buying it from an alternative supplier. So you can take some time to do some of that homework. Because at the end of the day, there's good strategies that exist with alternative energy suppliers, but they need to be managed well. They need to be consistently reviewed. We need to know when the expiration dates are on those contracts so that we can re-engage suppliers for new pricing and not get burned. So as it relates to just some of those recommendations, in Michigan, for example, natural gas is fully deregulated. We've seen natural gas prices since 2014 remain pretty steady and pretty low, with a couple exceptions of January 2019, a polar vortex kind of spiking it. But the recommendation that we would have in this space is, if you're looking at an alternative supplier or sending out an RFP to different suppliers for the gas or electricity load of your building, don't just look at the supplier's bids against each other, always review them against the utility itself, because you don't need to buy something from the utility, but you also don't need to contract with an alternative supplier. You can shift and you can move back and forth once per year to take advantage of the best rates. And what we're seeing in the market today is that smaller users, places like office buildings like ours, and probably residential buildings as well, are doing well by staying with their utility company. To be honest, the utilities, especially here in the Midwest, have been pretty competitive relative to alternative suppliers. But just as another kind of note around best practices, it's always good to review that and to send out a request for proposal from alternative suppliers, which is something that our firm can certainly help with as well. So just kind of carrying on with these recommendations, kind of mentioned some of these already. Second point here is consider your appetite for risk and keep tabs on trends in the energy market. So do you want to be fixing a price for a commodity long-term into the future, or would you rather kind of ride a variable rate? There's ways that you can fix a portion of your rate and leave some of the spend on like an index. So consider that as you're looking into these things. And then I mentioned this already, consistently shop at least a few different suppliers and compare them to the utility and request 12, 24, 36-month pricing from alternative suppliers so you can see what kind of advantages you might be able to take long-term into the future. That is about it, Brett. That's about all I had to go through. So we can take this time now for questions and answers and further discussion. And I'm happy to go back up and look at different slides or go back into the dashboard and do more of a demonstration. But yeah, thank you everybody for taking the time and listening to the presentation, and we can open it up now.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. We've got some questions coming in. We've got some more time for questions. For those of you who have to get going, you are all set for your CEU, don't worry, but stick around if you still want to keep having some conversations. Where do you get that CEU certificate? Check your spam for customer care at GoToWebinar. If you don't see it pop up, you'll see it there. Make sure to take the survey at the bottom of it. For those of you watching this in the future on demand, not right now, make sure to take that quiz, that 10-question quiz with an 80% passing rate. You can find the quiz on our Thinkific platform or wherever platform you're watching it on. Follow the instructions to take the quiz. And before we get to those questions coming in, a huge thanks to our board of directors, all of our volunteers, our new executive director, and our top tier sponsors, Mitsubishi Electric, Build, Equinox CRV, and Rheem, all helping you get to net zero all electric in a healthy and safe way. Also, before we get to the questions, I did want to remind everybody just real quick. So one thing we are working on is working with landlord portals. So a lot of times, if you're multifamily housing agencies, a lot of your utility companies will give you access to your tenants' utility data. You may not know this. And you can get access to it and help make informed decisions about what the heck is going on in your building. And more importantly, we can take that information, and as we do on our certification projects that we're working on, and port them over to these fine folks who can help you make even further more informed decisions about that data. You know, that is a great place to start. So if you don't have this kind of data and you're a landlord, contact your utility company, because you do have the rights to it in most cases across the country. Most of these landlord portals are the same portal being run by the same couple firms across the country through each utility. Some concerns are privacy. So we have been, reaching out to the utility companies and saying, look, if you're giving third-party agencies this, don't give us names of the people in the building. We don't need to know their names. We just want to know the usage to what units, so we can see, oh, this unit's having an issue. There's a concern here. How do we help them? And so that's one thing, some folks are weary of that, so look out for that. And we've seen just recently some of the agencies and utilities change it. The other cool thing is, again, this data can be submitted to Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is one thing that Brian's program can connect to, or can go to them. So then it can be shared with these agencies if they need to see the Energy Star scores and data. And again, that data should include dates and usage and cost, gas, electric, and maybe water usage. So look out for those portals if you haven't seen them, and ask your utility company to give you access to it. So, I had let's see, we got a couple questions here. Yeah, so I see your question in here about community rates, and I'm Robert, and I'm not quite sure exactly what you're asking. So if you want to re-ask the specific question, let me know, and I will put it out there. So in addition to bait and switch type supply offers that Brian mentioned, there are outright scammers out there. Be sure to check with your state's listing of authorized alternative suppliers. So this looks like more like a comment than a question, but I mean, Brian,
yeah.
I assume you guys are helping weed those scammers out, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the way that at Foresight, the way that we work is we're completely client centric. We would conduct those RFPs on behalf of our clients. So we would research the industry, research the particular market, if it's Michigan or if it's somewhere else, to understand who the reputable suppliers are, who are the marketers that have assets and have built a good reputation in that particular market. And then we conduct the RFPs and see all the contracts, review all those contracts, understand the language, and then make a recommendation to the client based on what supplier we think has their best interest in mind. We don't have any exclusive relationships with suppliers. We're completely agnostic as it relates to that. We just want to work to get the best deal and the one that makes most sense to our clients. But yeah, we see it often where a new client, for example, signs up for our service. We start gathering historical bills, and then we see on one of the bills the name of a supplier that has them locked into some egregious price for a long duration of time, and that's where we sit down with the client and do some of this explanation of like, all right, once this is up, or let's contact the supplier and see if we can get out of this contract. Let's do some homework to make sure that we avoid these costs.
Great. So a question, can a community as a collective negotiate a rate, much like community solar, rather than negotiating rates on an individual basis? Have you seen that or been involved in that?
We haven't been involved in that, to be honest, but I have seen some of that, or I've heard some rumblings around it, specifically with solar, but also in smaller municipal areas and co-ops. So there's a lot of within Michigan and different territories that consumers in DTE don't necessarily have jurisdiction over. There's smaller utilities like the Holland BPW or Lansing Board of Power and Light, or co-ops all throughout the state of Indiana that are really advocating for the people in that district and want to hear from them and how they are using electricity and gas and what types of things that the co-op could do to better support them.
So I'm thinking about, these deregulated electricity markets. I had some family that lived in Texas. They moved there several years ago, and they sent me like a list of all the things they could pick from, a la carte menu of, what to pick when they signed up for electricity. And they're like, hey, I wanted to send you this. We thought you'd appreciate it. What should we choose? And I'm like, don't ask me that question, because I'll just say pick 100% renewables and you'll probably pay a lot of money. So I think they found some middle ground there. But I'm wondering, as we're trying to make a shift to go all renewable and electrify, and in so doing, in some cases, obviously, to move away from gas to electricity, you're significantly, there's a lot of times a higher cost per unit of energy for now anyway on electricity rates over gas. Have you seen in these seen in these deregulation strategies that there might be people who offer certain rates if you're on a heat pump, for example, where you can get a better deal through a third party based on not necessarily where you are, your contract, but really the actual technology that is generating the energy for you?
That's a good question, Brett. There's been some of that. Some utilities are offering more rates that are specific to the technology within the building, which I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Absolutely, and I'm meaning more like, yeah, whether it's the utility or one of those, like the guy knock on your door and he's like, hey, if you have a heat pump, I mean, that's the guy I'm hoping knocks on my door someday, but I can get you a better deal. I'm a little biased, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's certainly more of that happening in the industry. The majority of the rate analysis that we're doing is sort of using backward-looking data on how a facility is operating today and what they should be in now, and then continually like staying engaged with that client to understand what type of building upgrades are happening, so that we can then layer that into the future rate analysis that we do. But I am seeing more of that. Our analysts are seeing more of that. We're bringing that up to our clients and saying, hey, do you have, there's like outdoor lighting meters. There are specific rates that deal with heat pumps, I know. So there are some more specific rates based on technology that are coming out for sure.
So obviously all these utility companies, very diverse where they're at, how you're dealing with them. So does that lend itself to allow you to work in other countries? Do you do that? Have you looked into that, or are you still pretty much locked into the U.S.?
Most of this work is being done here in the U.S., but more and more as our client base includes international buildings that they want to have us doing just the data collection piece on. We're getting more of a purview into some specific ones, Mexico, the UK, each of which the UK specifically has very different parameters around renewables and how those renewable assets play into the electricity rates, some of the requirements around that. So we're getting some more exposure into that and doing a lot of learning in that space right now.
Great. Well, Brian, we are a little bit over our time, but I want to thank you for joining us. Where can people go to learn more or contact you if they want to, just reach out and see what we can do?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say LinkedIn for sure. We do a lot of Foresight Management does a lot of posting on LinkedIn, and everybody on our team is on there and pretty active. So that'd be a good place to start. Our website is a little bit of a word soup or letter soup, I guess. It's alphabet letter soup. It's fsmgmt.co. So FS for Foresight, MGMT management.co. And you can go there and see a lot more information about what we're working on.
All right, Brian. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to Foresight for joining us and helping us learn a little bit more here. And again, just we love doing our webinars. We're going to keep doing these every week, everybody. But we would hope to start doing some sessions in person someday soon. So do everything you can to help us get there, and know that we can use ventilation and filtration and building science to solve many of our problems beyond just the pandemic. So we hope that you'll help us spread that message to ventilate, filter our buildings, and move forward together. And so be safe, be healthy, be well, take care. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.